Hey YouTube, it's your boys. I'm here with a new video. First off, I hope you guys are all doing well. I was scrolling YouTube the other day and I saw a video by Benjipai titled "The Sad End of Mortal Kombat 1" is this video right here. And he honestly hit a lot of great points. You know, he talked about why Mortal Kombat 1 kind of failed and was a letdown, especially from the casual side. You know, he mentioned a lot of the things that, people didn't like, such as the lackluster invasions mode, the missing features, the story mode, which was not that good to be honest, how the DLC was priced. He mentioned a lot, so I'm not gonna go over his video, but I did want to mention it since it is the inspiration for this video that I'm making. And if you guys are wondering what this video is, I'm someone who's been in a competitive scene, so my view of why this game failed, aside from the obvious, these features, is a bit different. I guess I look at it from also a gameplay perspective, or I prioritize it in a gameplay perspective. So that's the side that I want to talk about and, kind of share with you guys. So definitely give this video a watch. I'm going to put in my description. And this video is great. So shout out to Menjipai, this content creator. It was a great video. And with that being said, let me get into the reasons of why I think this Mortal Kombat 1 didn't do as well. It was a letdown for me, at least, from a competitive perspective. So let's get into it. Is the addition of cameo fighters. Now, cameo fighters were the new kind of gameplay style of Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 11. They kind of, follow the same thing as Mortal Kombat X, with variations. Now, it didn't work out as well. Variations weren't as fun or appealing in Mortal Kombat 11 as they were with X, because X, I feel like it just worked because variations felt fulfilling and different. But Mortal Kombat 11 did not have that feeling. Variations were not as good, and it introduced a lot of mechanics that people didn't really like, including myself. And in MK1, they actually scrapped a lot of these mechanics, and these mechanics are breakaway, which I'm showing here on screen. Breakaway was essentially a mechanic where you got hit and you got punished for hitting someone, so nobody enjoyed this mechanic from MK11. And in MK1 they went back to normal breakers as shown here, so that was definitely a positive right there. In terms of flawless block, they actually removed the main issue of flawless block from MK11, which was the up 2 and up 3 attacks basically being launched or hit in hit stun, or on block or reversal, basically just stealing turns, which people didn't enjoy, including myself as well. And that was removed in MK1, basically making flawless block a chip mechanic, or just a way to reduce chip, which was a great change in my opinion, and definitely should stay for future Mortal Kombat titles. And then the third addition they made in MK11 was Fatal Blow, which, to be honest, as you guys can see here, was a terrible mechanic. And if you remember playing against it, it was a 30% super move given to somebody for basically losing. And it had armor, it started up in like 6 frames, and the pushback on it was insane. And MK1, still it functions exactly the same, except it has a freeze frame now. But to be honest, they're still pretty much the same. Like, the armor starts up at 6 frames, even though it does have a freeze frame, so they can't just catch you more randomly. Fatal blows are still a bad mechanic in my opinion. But as you can see, most of the mechanics from MK11 got removed when it came to MK1, right? So that was definitely a positive. Now the issue is that cameo fighters were introduced. Now, I don't say issue because of the idea itself. Cameo fighters were, the idea of cameos weren't a letdown for me, at least. I do prefer 1v1s, but I was excited for the concepts. I played the Mortal Kombat 1 beta, thought it was actually pretty fun. But when these cameos came out, event by event, so when it came to competitive, the cameos, and then we'll get to the characters, but the cameos were the main issue at first, because the cameos of the game were so honestly overpowered, to the point of characters, like, even though the character kits were, maybe some character kits were good or they weren't, the cameos were so overpowered to a point of, and this is the thing about it. I'm not saying cameos as a whole were overpowered, because some cameos were not good at all. So when this game released, the cameos that you never saw, and you probably still don't see a lot, are like Shujinko, Darius, Kano used to be used a lot. Doesn't He's not used as much anymore. Frost is still barely never used. Cyrax isn't really used anymore. So essentially, when this game came out, for the first 3-4 months until leading up to the first major, which was ECT, East Coast Throwdown, as I mentioned, Cyrax plagued the game. So all you really saw were block strings into Cyrax. He had this one move. It was like a helicopter spin, and this move right here didn't have any cooldown. And because of that on cooldown, all you saw gameplay wise was a character like Raiden. You know, Raiden has a move called Storm Cell. At that time, it was incredibly broken because all you did was down one, which is a poke into that special move, and you kept it safe with Cyrax. You kept it plus for no bar. Cyrax also gave that utility to characters like Baraka. He gave that utility to characters like Johnny Cage, and you also had Kung Lao Hat, which was also incredibly broken. It was a skip neutral tool that was +3 on block, or +2 on block if I remember, with barely any cooldown. But this cameo wasn't as bad in a sense because of it getting overshadowed by Cyrax. But yeah, throughout this game's life cycle, for the first 3-4 months, Cyrax was incredibly broken and kind of promoted a non-interactive game plan of like poke special into keeping it safe or plus on block. And then when Cyrax finally got changed, then we had to deal with Kung Lao meta essentially, which was everyone skipping neutral with the low hat that he has in this kit, and it's also plus on block with no cooldown. So then we had to deal with that for 2-3 months. And then when Kung Lao cameo finally got changed, which keep in mind it took them about 5 months to change Kung Lao cameo from how it was, then Striker cameo took over the game. And this cameo, the problem with all these cameos is they promoted such uninteractive gameplay. Striker cameo essentially did what I'm showing here, and that is you would pretty much do anything and then call these striker grenades. Now they finally bounced them, and this also took like 4 months. By the time they bounced him, then we got the characters, which are the issue, the DLC characters, which I'll talk about in the next section. But by the time they bounced Striker, which this is basically what he did, you would do anything you want, call these grenades, and these grenades had such a low cooldown. And all these cameos, Cyrax, Kung Lao, Striker, they all promoted very uninteractive gameplay. You know, Kung Lao made you skip neutral and the whole neutral aspect of the game, free plus frames. Cyrax made you do down one specials for free with no thought because he didn't have any cooldown as well. And the Striker was just equivalent of that. And then when these cameos all were kind of like fleshed out, and keep in mind, all these other cameos that were in the game, such as Tremor, Sonya, Sector, Serena, like all Scorpion, all these cameos were not Goro. Goro was used with 2 characters, which were Tanya and Kung Lao, but their gameplay loops were also very uninteractive. And you guys probably know exactly what I'm talking about when I mentioned these teams. But just to talk about, these cameos were practically rendered not usable or not really worth to use because of how these 3 cameos dominated the game, because of poor balancing and just the balancing team not really tweaking them in time or not really understanding like why the gameplay loop is so uninteractive, and which led to, you know, our DLC cameos, which nowadays are literally the new cycles of these, right? Like Chameleon got really, Tremor was the first DLC cameo, and he wasn't that good at the beginning. It wasn't really used as much at all, to be honest. Chameleon was the first DLC cameo that was really broken because of her 3 moves and her 3 cycles and how she functioned. And she played the game for 4 months, essentially promoting the same gameplay loop that these did, just in a different way. You know, her katana mode basically made you be able to get out of hit stun, just like Striker, just to get out of there whenever you do something unsafe. Melina Ball Roll, which was an instant overhead with pushbacks, so it made it hard to punish. And then Jade Glaive, which was basically Serena, but just way better because it was a mid that hit, it was plus on block, and it granted you a full combo just for existing. And then we got Janet, Movado, and then we got Pharah, which was definitely literally safe 50-50s, nothing to mention about that. So The cameo fighters essentially, I know it's this was a long, they were a good idea in my opinion. Not a, no, no, let me take that back. They were an interesting idea. I think MK1, I think Mortal Kombat as a franchise should stick to the 1v1 core game plan because that's what makes up Mortal Kombat in my opinion. And I think them trying something new, I wasn't against it, you know, I was like actually interested in it. But unfortunately the balancing of these cameos just made the game worse in my opinion. So for the first 6 to 9 months we had to deal with very uninteractive game plans, and essentially this lowered the skill gap in competitive and made tournaments not really fun to watch because you were seeing the same 2-3 teams every single tournament, and it was just not an interactive gameplay loop. So cameo fighters, you know, interesting idea, did not work out for the game, so definitely think this was a main issue. Alright y'all, now I kind of want to talk about the biggest issue and you know what this video is really about. I did want to mention cameos first because cameos were kind of, you know, the new addition that NRS wanted to go with, the new formula of their, you know, MK gameplay. So I want to talk about that first and how I don't think it really succeeded. I think I could have, but I don't think it really succeeded because of what we're going to talk about here, and that is the character slash balancing that this game has had. The balancing in this game has been very poor, and I don't really know what happened with the NRS team. I'm speaking, you know, full honest. From Injustice 2 and beginning of MK11 to Aftermath MK11, I thought the balancing was pretty decent. And somewhere along the line, at the end of MK11 or near the end, and basically all of MK1, aside from maybe a few decisions, the balancing has been very poor in my opinion. Whether it's characters getting buffs for no reason, the wrong buffs, over buffed, like Havoc when he went from bottom one to top one, or characters getting nerfed to death, such as Peacemaker, who received the nerf and now you barely see him, or Tanya, characters like that. And then it's just the balancing decisions that kind of don't make sense. And then the biggest issue, aside from all that, from the base balancing decisions, is the DLC characters of this game. The DLC characters, bro, you guys know the term pay to win. I know sometimes people use it as a joke, or sometimes it's actually legit. I'll tell you right now, in MK1, it is legit. If you've played this game at all, whether it's Combat League, competitively, the term pay to win is actually a fact. Because as you see here, I've highlighted the DLC characters, right? Or Combat Pack 1 characters of this game. Now, if I just go to the base roster of this game, right, and all the DLC characters are grayed out. If you think about all these characters now, and I'm talking about now after patches, because obviously we had to deal with Raiden for 9 months of doing down one special. We had to deal with Johnny being overwhelmingly, you know, broken on offense, and then he had the parry. Kung Lao and Tanya were doing brain dead armor launchers. If you just think about it now, and that's what I mean, by the way, the balancing decisions, we had to deal with all this for like 9 months to a year, which is an insane amount of time for us to deal with such broken game plans that take no skill to do. But now if you look at this roster, for the most part you wouldn't really complain about most of them, aside from maybe like Shao or Raiko, which also got over buffed or buffed in ways that they shouldn't have been buffed. Shao's only weakness, which was his mix being unsafe, one of his options being unsafe, they made both options safe, so now Shao is literally like a character that kills you and he's safe while doing it, which is insane. But for the most part you wouldn't complain about these characters now, right? But if I bring up, you know, if I just press DLC characters, you guys would probably instantly say you hate Homelander, and we know about Peacemaker when this character came out and how he dominated the game for 4 to 7 months or whatever it was. Ermac is a good DLC character. He got released. He's been good. Not overly broken. Same with Takeda, Omni-Man, Quan Chi. They've been in a decent place. Now, Peacemaker and Homelander, when you think about it, when these two characters came out, Peacemaker literally dominated Final Combat. So if you guys watched Final Combat, you probably just saw this character. And you saw Johnny Cage, because the reason for that is Johnny Cage was the only character who can actually fight Peacemaker. because at that time Peacemaker literally beat everyone in this game like 7-3 or 6-4. So that was horrible balancing and horrible decision to release a character like that. And then when we finally finished with the Peacemaker, era, when he finally got nerfed, which he got over nerfed, which is another result of balancing, we got Homelander, and Homelander dominated this game for whenever he came out until now. He's still probably like top 3, top 5, right? But when he came out, Homelander had 4-way, 5-way mix that you had to deal with. He had, like this option right here was a low. Forward 4 used to be a low. He still has command grabs that hit you from full screen and that are unreactable. So you're basically essentially guessing. Now this forward 4 is a mid, so that finally got balanced out. But this character is still broken even with these two change, with that big change. So it really tells you what you were fighting against before. And that's not even to mention that he has tick grabs off of his buttons, and his tick grabs worked on hit when he released. So there's just a bunch of stuff that I'm going over that you guys remember that we had to deal with when playing this game. And then Homelander, I guess he got normalized. He's still broken, but not as bad as he was when he got released. And you're like, okay, finally we have a meta where we can play the game without, these overly broken top tiers. And then Chaos Range comes out, and we get introduced to 2 new characters, Cyrax and T1000. Conan, good place, strong character. Ghostface, strong character, has his weaknesses. Noob, I think Noob is actually, aside from Ermac, probably the best designed DLC character. Sector is a bit repetitive, but it is what it is. And Cyrax and T1000 come out, and brother, I'll be honest, I really stopped playing around this time, so I'm not as I don't have to deal with this every day since I haven't competed in season 2 of pro competition or just played MK1 like that. But Cyrax, the things I see her do, and then T1000, I actually have fought this character recently. It's literally just Homelander Peacemaker Part 2. So then, like this is literally Peacemaker's game plan. Like he does this one string, and you have to guess 4 ways, whether it's overhead, low, command grab at any point during the string. You can also do this hammer that throws you off. Yeah. And you see, that's just a result of balancing and his poor designs. And I'm mentioning all this, and I still haven't talked about the Kameos balancing, which we kind of talked about in the first section. But if you pair a character like Homelander and how Farah is currently, or how Chameleon was, then you really see the sense of what I'm talking about here. You know what I mean? You really see the scale of how balancing and just overly powered DLC characters have made this game very scrubby, in my opinion. T1000, I'm not gonna lie, this character is legit made for babies. Like, if I'm not this character is made for babies. Peacemaker was made for babies when he came out. Homelander is still made for babies. These characters are so overwhelmingly easy. And then when you even think about these characters, like if we look at the base roster, we had to deal with Raiden for 9 months. We had to deal with all the characters I mentioned, right? Kenshi for however long. Baraka for, when he came out doing whatever he wants in the Cyrax. Examples like that. So every single patch of this game, meta has just been a repetitive loop of guessing, scrubby gameplay. And there really hasn't been a patch that I can say for this game that has been good. And MK11, at least I can say there were times that the game was in its best state, such as Aftermath, where I believe the game was good, and the skill gap was there, the skill required to play certain characters were there. But in this game, and I know you guys feel this, even if you guys do like this game, you guys can't disagree with me that T1000 or Homelander or how Peacemaker released are characters that are interactive to play against, characters that you enjoy playing against, or characters that honestly just take skill. Like I don't want anyone to sugarcoat it, even if you are a bigger fan of this game than I am. The reality of this game is the balancing has been very poor, the DLC has been very poor, and that has just led to a gameplay loop that has not been enjoyable for me and a lot of players, to be honest. Because when most of these players are not enjoying the features that this game has, very limited features, not enjoying the invasion mode, story mode, whatever it is. Obviously, the gameplay is the only thing saving it. And when this is the gameplay, when you have to constantly guess or playing against people doing very simple but hard to deal with or impossible to deal with game plans, it's just a gameplay loop of repetitiveness, and that's really why I think this game's gameplay, like aside from the the issues that were covered in the video that I mentioned, the gameplay issues from a competitive standpoint and even a casual standpoint, that's why I think the gameplay in this game was a failure, in my opinion. I think it could have been good. The reason I call it a failure is because the game's pretty much done. They could still release a patch after I make this video and maybe fix some of these things, but for the majority of the time, this game has definitely been not the most fun to play. I can't lie to you guys. Every single patch, there's been something that has been either increasingly overpowered. And I just realized, me talking about all this, I didn't even mention Havoc, which got buffed from bottom one to top one, and he's also yeah, see, I didn't even mention him, and he's another character in that list. But yeah, I wanted to touch on this section because I know I introduced it with cameos, but this is really the main issue. It's the pay-to-win DLCs, the horrible character, really archetypes that they came out with, such as Peacemaker just doing torpedo and a cameo, T1000 doing one string in a mix, Homelander mixing you 4 ways just for existing. It's a bad gameplay loop. So yeah, that's why I think MK1's gameplay didn't live up to what it could have been. Obviously, there's still time until Final Combat, but the game's pretty much done. With the devs saying they're not supporting the game anymore. So I kind of wanted to make this video. And just remember, every video I do make for this game, maybe it sounds like I'm coming off as hating, but if you guys have watched my streams or just actually know me as a person, obviously MK is definitely my favorite franchise. And I definitely want the best for its gameplay in general, because obviously I do play competitive, but yeah, I can't lie, the gameplay, it's really just a balancing. The decisions they've made are not it. And I know I'm ranting, but this is really just me getting it, like me telling you guys the real truth about how I feel about the game, because I'm probably not going to be talking about it much more, but I just want to make this video since the game's kind of ending. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching once again, and I'll see y'all next video. I'll take it easy. Let me know if you guys want more videos like this, if you guys have any questions in the comments, and I always appreciate y'all. You guys have a great day, stay safe, and I'll see y'all next video. Take it easy.